Hey, what's going on, everyone? In this video, we are looking at the Week 13 Draftkings and Fanduel picks. So let's get right into it. As always, appreciate if you guys hit the like button on the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Down to 11 games on the slate because the Washington-Pittsburgh game got moved, but there's quite a bit to talk about with some injuries, some like a big suspension in Houston, which will really shake up that offense. So quite a bit to get to. I am looking forward to it, so let's get right into it. So if you want to join us, you can visit the website, links in description, dfsprocess.net. You can follow me on Twitter if you want more updates and just stay more up to date. It's at the DFS Process on Twitter. And let's get started. So this week at the top of quarterbacks, no quarterback is above 8,000. Russell Wilson techs in as the highest priced quarterback at 7,700. It's going to be a pretty big favorite for them at home against a Giants team that could be without Daniel Jones. They said he has a shot to play, but dealing with a hamstring injury, if he happens to sit, that offense is just going to probably struggle to score some points. Didn't practice Wednesday, so if he's out, then I don't really see how Seattle needs Russell Wilson to throw 40, 50 times in this one, which would limit some of his upside. So I'm not thrilled about paying 77 for Wilson against the Giants if Daniel Jones is out, because I don't see how they stay in that game. Kyler Murray still dealing with some of that shoulder injury that he suffered a couple weeks ago. He's questionable, but he should be good to go. I'm not thrilled about playing him at 76 against a very good Rams defense because they can get to the quarterback. They have a good secondary. So I think I like going a bit cheaper at quarterback. I'm not thrilled with the two guys above 7,500. The one guy that I do like right at 7,500 is Deshaun Watson. He's been the best quarterback over the past couple weeks in terms of like quarterback rating. Mahomes is up there as well, but him and Mahomes have been the two best quarterbacks recently. He has over 34 drafting points in two straight games. He's facing a Colts defense that has been very good this year, but they just got absolutely lit up by the Titans last week. And I think that Deshaun Watson is in his best form. The only problem is that he did lose his best weapon in Will Fuller, so it's going to be tough for him and that offense just because they're losing their best player and they released Kenny Stills as well. So I still think that he can get the job done just because he can run with his legs. He still has Brandon Cooks and still has Kuti who can run a deep ball route. So I feel like Watson. He's one of the few quarterbacks that I'm considering this week. The second quarterback that I really like is Aaron Rodgers at home against the Eagles. Rodgers has been so good this season, 33-4 touchdown interception ratio. He has been lighting defenses up. He hasn't had like one bad game all season. He's had one that was back against Tampa Bay, but that was pretty anomaly for him. Other than that, he's been over 19 drafting points every single week. Gives you a super high floor at a $6,800 price tag. It's one of his cheapest price tags he's been all season against an Eagles secondary that they just got lit up a bit by, well, not a bit, but they got lit up by DK Metcalf. They have been surrendering some points. Middle of the pack defense, but Rodgers at home is just a different beast. So he's definitely going to be the second quarterback that I'm considering besides Deshaun Watson. Another guy that I like down here in the 6K range is going to be Ryan Tannehill. I think makes for a decent tournament play at 6,200 just because he has a ton of upside, never gets that much ownership ever. He gives you some upside with his legs too, and he has definitely shown a ceiling, but he has shown a low floor too because they can rely on Derrick Henry all game. So for that reason, he's best suited for tournaments. But the cheap quarterback that I like this week is going to be Mitch Trubisky. He's 5,400. He's going to start again this week. Was looked really bad in the first half and then got it going a bit in the second half. Some garbage time, but still was a pretty good play in terms of point per dollar wise. He was on the showdown slates unless you played him in prime time or whatever, but still 5,400 for him. Only price tag has only gone up by $300, so not that much of a price increase at all. The matchup just goes from facing a very good Green Bay defense or a very good Green Bay team to a very bad Detroit team and a very bad Detroit defense. Just fired their coach. They're kind of in disarray. They're giving up the second most points in football this season. They're giving up a ton of points, both on the ground and through the air. And Mitch Trubisky has some upside. He has a lot to play for right now. If he has a bad game, then he's probably not going to get another chance for them to start whenever Foles is healthy. But he's playing for his job. He's playing for probably the rest of his NFL starting career. If he comes out and has a very good game, he could definitely start for the rest of the season for them. And it's a very good spot against Detroit. It gives you upside with his legs a bit too, and he has a decent ceiling. So I think Trubisky at 5,400 gives you a very high ceiling, a bit lower floor, but at $5,400, I'm willing to take a risk at home against Detroit. So those the three quarterbacks that I really like this week are Sean Watson, Aaron Rodgers, and Mitch Trubisky. Probably pick one of the three by the end of the week, but depending on some of the injury news that comes out. But I do like Trubisky right now, just for what he allows me to get to at wide receiver, at running back, at tight end. Moving on to running backs this week, Dalvin Cook is questionable. He had a very bad game. He was super popular. Luckily, did not have him in cash, so it was a nice week there. But I definitely think it's a better spot this week against Jacksonville. They're the second worst or third worst run defense. If he is good to go, then it's a very good spot for him to have a bounce back game. If he's limited, then it's going to be a struggle to pay off that $9,500 salary. They have Madison back there who can take some work, so I have to wait and see. If we get more value, then it's going to be easier to get up to him. But there's quite a bit of other running backs to consider. Like now you got to make the decision between Derrick Henry and Dalvin Cook. Cook has been more consistent this year. Both have flashed that big time ceiling. I always would side with Cook just because he gives you more upside in the receiving department, and you can't really rely on a running back to get you 3 touchdowns every single week, which is what Henry will need to pay off, or to have a GPP winning score because he's not catching you passes. So for that reason, I would side with Cook, but you can make an argument for both of them. I love Nick Chubb at 7,700 against Tennessee. He has been the workhorse. He's also just like Henry, doesn't get involved in the passing game, but he's 3 straight games over 100 yards. Those were against the Eagles are a very good run defense. He busted off a 54-yarder. This gives you a ton of upside and a high floor just because he's getting you 19 to 20 carries. Browns really rely on the running game all season, and it's just increased when they lost Odell Beckham. So I like Nick Chubb. Josh Jacobs is questionable. He didn't practice, so we'll see if he's going to be good to go. If he's out, then you got Devontae Booker, who is only 5,500. He would be a nice play against the Jets, but keep an eye on that. Robinson at 7,300. They've been able to use him a lot because last week they were in that game against Cleveland, so they relied on him to kind of keep it close on the ground and not give the ball right back to the Cleveland offense. But I still would like to go with a guy if I'm paying over 7,000 in a better spot. Not that it's a bad spot, but like in a better spot to score some more points because I don't think that offense is going to do that much damage on the road. Eckler 7,100. You got to give him some love here, mainly because first game back he got 16 targets right out of the backfield after missing 8 weeks. So he got 25 touches. He had potential to get 30 touches if he caught all 16 of his targets. Just a PPR monster. It's not the easiest spot, but it's not the worst spot. It's a middle of the pack defense in the Patriots, so you got to give him, at least consider him a bit. Kamara just hasn't looked good with Taysom Hill, and I'm not going to go with him. The Falcons defense absolutely made Carr look horrible last week, and that offense just fall apart. So you couldn't even take a shot on the Atlanta defense because Taysom Hill is prone to throwing some picks, and we saw what that defense can do last week. In the 6K range, we have some plays that look pretty appealing with Sanders at 67 against Green Bay. You have Chris Carson at only 6,300. Missed a couple weeks, came back, only had 10 touches, but kind of lost some touches to Carlos Hyde, but only played 37% of the snaps. But his price tag is still fair. It's a spot where they should be able to lead this game, and if they just rely on the ground, you can see Carson be a pretty good play at 6,300. Then we have a couple guys that are priced up, like Williams and Scott, not interested there. Gaskin, if he returns, could be a decent play. Then for tournaments, you can look at Kenyon Drake, just because he's getting you some touches. Never gets ownership, but last week he got his 22 carries. He's been really involved, and he gets you those goal line work. But I do like David Montgomery at 5,500. You're getting a nice cheap stack between him and Trubisky. You can even run it back with Allen Robinson and stack all three of them up because 80 to 90% of this offense is coming from those two guys, Montgomery and Robinson. They haven't got much out of their second and third wide receivers this year. And Montgomery had his biggest run of the year, probably of his entire life. 57-yard first play on that offensive drive last week against Green Bay. He looks good at 55 against one of the worst run defenses in football. And then if Jacobs is out, you could play Booker and go cheap at running back, or you could pay up a bit for Cook or Chubb. Right now, I like Chubb at 7,700 against Tennessee. At wide receiver, I like Davante Adams to pay up for this week. It's just a very good spot against Philly. We saw, well, Slay is a good defender, but he got lit up by Metcalf, and Adams, couple of weeks where he hasn't gotten you tons of, hasn't gotten 10 targets the last 2 weeks, but those were against a decent Chicago defense and a decent Indianapolis secondary. But I definitely think he can bounce back and have just a monster game. He's done it all year. Has scored a touchdown in like every single game except for a couple this year, so it gives you just such a high floor. And I definitely think at home he can bust out a big play. So sign me up for some Davante Adams, especially if people pay up for some other guys. But I just think that he has the highest ceiling this week. Metcalf looks fine, but he's expensive, and they could be just relying on the running game in this one. Keenan Allen, it's a decent spot because he's probably going to avoid a Gilmore playing in the slot, but still not thrilled about paying 81 when I can just get up to Davante Adams. Oh, Hopkins is going to be defended by Jalen Ramsey, so another tough spot for Hopkins. I think I would rather go all the way up for Adams, and then the second wide receiver you can play is Allen Robinson at 6,700 to do a three-man stack between Trubisky, Montgomery, and Robinson. If you're not comfortable with playing three Bears, you can go with Robert Woods, who's only 5,900. Pretty good spot against the Arizona. We have one of the most popular plays probably this week is going to be Brandon Cooks at 5,600 because no Will Fuller is just going to mean he's the number one guy. You could even play a very, very cheap Kiki Kuti at 3,500 who's going to get a lot more work, be on the field the entire game. So I like both of those guys. You can do a two-man stack with them, both cheap receivers in a very pass-heavy offense. So sign me up for some Brandon Cooks. And then going below $6,000, there's a couple of guys that I like in the 4K range, like Allen Lazard. Right at 5,000 looks good. If you wanted to pass on Adams and go cheap, get some piece of that offense. But below 5,000, we have T.Y. Hilton, who had a resurgent game, had his first touchdown of the season last week. Still wouldn't chase that because he's not shown that to be consistent all year. Bashard Perriman at 3,900 against the Raiders. He's been getting you snaps, being on the field 95+% of the games since he's been back and since week 9, and not the worst spot against the Raiders. You do have a cheap Julio Jones if he's back this week at only 6,600. But if I needed to go cheap this week, there's one guy that I really like at almost min prices, Kiki Kuti at 3,500. No Will Fuller, who has just been that main dog in that offense. Deshaun Watson is still going to throw a ton, especially in this type of game if they do get down, which they definitely can be trailing in this game and have to throw a lot. It's going to be going to Kuti and Cooks, two guys with a big play upside. They're both cheap. It allows you to still get to Davante Adams and pay up there. You can still pay up for a running back like Nick Chubb and then go a bit cheap at defense this week. For defenses this week, could look at the Jets, just with how inconsistent that Raiders offense has been all season. They're $2,100. The Falcons against the Saints at home after what they did last week, and they are still kind of they just got to win almost every game for the rest of the year. But with that extra playoff spot, they still are fighting for something, and that defense looked really good last week, and Taysom Hill isn't, a very good quarterback in terms of throwing. So look at the Falcons defense. I like them quite a bit. The Jets. So I'll probably go cheap at defense this week. You could even look at like the Chargers at 2,600 against Cam Newton, who has been throwing a ton of picks and been a decent turnover machine this year. At tight end, looking at Kanyan at 3,700, you can double stack the Green Bay a bit with him and Adams. You could look at if Zach Ertz happens to return, he's only 3,900. Could look there. You have Kyle Rudolph at 3,400 if Irv Smith still isn't back, but I probably would go with like Tanyan at 3,700, or go up a bit, or go down to up a bit to Zach Ertz if he's in at 3,900. Would be, it's been Carson Wentz's favorite weapon for years now. But we'll see if Wentz even starts this week after how he played last weekend or on Monday night. And if you want to pay all the way up, it's going to be for Darren Waller, but that's never easy to pay up for $6,100 tight end, especially when you have Waller, who's been pretty inconsistent this year. Like, if he gets you 6 fantasy points again at 6,000, that's not going to cut it, and it's probably going to hurt you a lot in terms of your other places that you're paying up for. So that's kind of it for the DraftKings. I think these 6 look really strong as kind of a first look. So let's go over to Fanduel and see how their pricing looks this week. All right, Fanduel at quarterback. It's still some of the same guys that I'm looking at on DraftKings. Rodgers, 85. I like Watson a bit more. It's 82, cheaper than Rodgers, more upside with his legs. Then you have a super cheap Mitch Trubisky who checks in at $6,900. That's definitely a way to go, save some money and pay up a bit at like wide receiver or running back. In the mid range, nothing that I'm really thrilled about, so probably go up to Watson and Rodgers, or go down to Mitch Trubisky this week on FanDuel. So I'm plug in Trubisky right now just because I like that salary on him at $6,900. Allows you to pay up a bit, pay up a lot at wide receiver. And the first guy I'm going to plug in is Devontae Adams at 95. Running back, Dalvin Cook 10.5. Last week he was 11,000 on FanDuel. It's just tough to pay that much for a running back, especially when we had some cheap ones last week, like Gallman was checked in at like half that salary. I love Nick Chubb at 8,700. You're saving quite a bit from almost $2,000 from Cook, saving $1,300 from Henry. It's a good spot against the Titans, so I like Chubb on a team that really wants to run the football. Carson is really expensive at 8,000, so I'm not thrilled about paying that much for him on FanDuel. Jacobs questionable. If he's hurt, then I'm not going to play him. Not be interested there. On FanDuel, you got to look at Austin Eckler, only 7K. Gives you a ton of upside in terms of touches. So he's going to be on my list of guys to consider. But still, you got a very cheap David Montgomery at $6,200. Devontae Booker, if he's in, at 6K. You got to look his way. But right now, I like Montgomery. And then Chubb, same running backs that I like on DraftKings. Wide receiver, Brandon Cooks. Going to be the second guy that I put in at 6,500, getting a number 1 guy with a ton of upside and a high floor. I would not be shocked if he gets like 12 targets this week against the Colts at home. Then we have, for some reason, Allen Robinson is under 7,000 on FanDuel. I'm going to be playing him. Looked good with Trubisky last week. Got 2 touchdowns inside the 5-yard line. Had 13 targets. He's been like getting a 35-40% snap share or target share for the Bears this season, and it's a good spot for them. I mean, if they're ever going to score some points and get that offense woken up a bit, it's going to be this week. They've lost 5 straight games, I believe, after starting 5-1, so they need a win. It's a spot where they definitely are in a good spot to get that win at home against Detroit. So I do not mind going with a 3-man Bears stack. Makes me a little sick to say it, but I like all 3 of them. All 3 of their salaries are nice, and the spot is just too good to pass up. So on FanDuel, this is kind of what I'm building around. Tight end wise, we still got the cheap guys in like Tanyan, who's 59, or just 57. You can save some salary there. You can play one of the Houston tight ends because they're going to step up and they're going to have to get a lot more involved in that offense. And Akins is 52 and Fells is 48. I'd rather go Akins. But both of them are going to see their involvement increase. And then you could pay off for Darren Waller if you're going cheap with Trubisky. Still like Houti on FanDuel. He's like $4,800. Could be one of the better value plays. And then defense. The 2 cheap defenses I'm looking at are the Jets this week and the Falcons. Both are below 3,500. Both are in a spot where they can force some turnovers. The Falcons against Taysom Hill, and then Derek Carr can definitely fumble and throw some picks. So that's pretty much a wrap for this video. That's kind of the first look, midweek look for Week 13. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and best of luck on Sunday.